We were wrong about the timeline. The timeline isn't a linear tree of branching lines. It's actually a spiral. And although it does begin with Skyward Sword, as some have suggested, it does not restart with Skyward Sword. The reality is much more complex than that, my friends. In this video, we're looking at the true design of the Zelda timeline, and why we should have known this all along. The idea that the Zelda timeline is a circle rather than a line makes a lot of sense when you stop to think about it. I mean, the games themselves have implied this idea subtly throughout. In A Link Between Worlds, the hero is described as being eternal. In Breath of the Wild, Zelda says whether skyward bound, adrift in time, or steeped in the glowing embers of twilight, the sacred blade is forever bound to the soul of the hero. At the end of Skyward Sword, Demise promises, "My hate never perishes. It is born anew in a cycle with no end." These words highlight the idea of an always present, always recurring cycle involving the hero, his sword, and his opponent. I mean, Link was even given a motorcycle called the Master Cycle Zero in Breath of the Wild. "You're a tricky one, Aonuma," referencing the Zelda cycle using a motorcycle. Real funny. Jokes aside, let's get down to the nitty-gritty and pull conclusions from our hypothesis. If the Zelda timeline is a circle, several other ideas must also be true. A circle has no beginning and no ending. To make a full rotation, you simply need to end where you began. Many things in our world exist on a cycle. We know 1 year has passed when the Earth has completed 365 rotations. This regular repeating path of the Earth is called an orbit. Most objects in the universe orbit around something else because gravity causes them to move toward each other. Without the gravitation of the sun, Earth would move at the same pace in the same direction constantly. None of these orbits would exist, however, without a singular origin point. Something set the Earth in motion, something scientists still theorize about, and something set in motion the orbital events of the Zelda timeline. And I know what that event is. My hate never perishes. It is born anew in a cycle with no end. I will rise again. At the end of Skyward Sword, Demise makes this promise about the descendants of the hero and princess. He promises that his hatred will be reborn in a continual cycle. This event in Skyward Sword is the external force that changed the direction of the Zelda timeline forever. From that point on, the timeline was doomed to repeat. It would now spiral and orbit around the events of Skyward Sword, but never interact with it again. This idea is different from other theories I've heard recently. Many speculate that the events of Tears of the Kingdom will connect to those of Skyward Sword, finishing the loop and completing one full rotation. However, there are several big reasons why Skyward Sword cannot connect with Tears of the Kingdom. Skyward Sword is basically the origin story of the Zelda series. Its prologue tells of the origin of the Triforce, Demise, and Hylia. For this story to repeat, everything would need to be entirely wiped out and recreated. Hylia would have to abandon her divinity and reincarnate again. The Master Sword would have to devolve into the Goddess Sword, only to then be remade into the Master Sword. The list could go on. Unless Tears of the Kingdom has a tragic ending, we can assume that everything is not completely wiped out by its events, meaning that Tears of the Kingdom could not seamlessly blend into Skyward Sword. Perhaps the biggest proof of this is what I already mentioned. Demise curses Link at the end of the game. He wouldn't do this if the curse was already active. Skyward Sword, then, is the big bang of the Zelda series, existing at the center of the timeline with all other events expanding outward from it in a rotating spiral. But we see islands in Tears of the Kingdom that look like the ones from Skyward Sword. They must be the same. Here's my rebuttal to that. Aonuma made a very interesting statement about these islands during his gameplay demo. Let's take a listen.
Some trees are also growing here. You won't see many of those yellow trees on the surface, though.
The vegetation on the islands is not the same as we find on the surface, meaning these aren't just pieces of the earth tossed into the sky. Instead, these islands already exist in and come from the sky. How did they get there then? And if Skyward Sword isn't the missing link in this timeline loop, what is? I believe I've come to a decent answer to this question, but for now, let's stay on the topic of the Zelda timeline as a circle and what that means. This is a difficult idea to stomach, so let's break it down. Think about what you did before watching this video, whatever that was. If time were a loop instead of progressional, you would eventually do that exact same thing again. Therefore, as the past writes itself, so does the future. Both happen simultaneously. Yet, the Zelda characters don't realize that history is repeating itself. Since the cycle includes hundreds of thousands of years, all history becomes legend before it eventually comes back around. And do we see lots of ancient legends throughout the games? You betcha! For instance, in Wind Waker, the game tells of a green-clad hero from the past. Minish Cap begins with a story about the hero of men who restored their land by driving out the darkness. Impa from Breath of the Wild tells the 10,000-year-old legend about Calamity Ganon's war on Hyrule. If these historical accounts were all true, and part of a linear branching timeline, what we know of that timeline would feature huge black holes between events. The timeline would also have to span hundreds of thousands of years to include this vast history. Instead, the timeline is a repeating cycle. These legends are shadows and foreshadows of events that may have already happened or are about to happen. If the timeline is a circle, does everything repeat exactly the same way? My guess would be no. There must be slight deviations between each rotation. Rhymes. And if the cycles do change slightly each time, what happens? Either the new cycle rewrites the old, kind of like a save file rewriting old data, or it creates an overlapping spiral. This thought opens the idea of a Zelda multiverse. Yes, we're entertaining this thought, stay with me. The universes closest to each other would have only slight changes between them, while the universes further away from each other might be very different. It'd be similar to the game of telephone. As the story is retold, variables are introduced. With each new telling, those changes grow until the story is very different from the original. I am more drawn to the idea of a spiraling, stacking timeline than one that rewrites itself, for one big reason. We've already seen it in action. What would happen if one of the spirals got too close to another distant spiral? Could a link from Hyrule suddenly be sent into a dark Termina, where the characters all look the same but act very different? What about a Lorule where the story is just a little tilted? Or perhaps a dark world where everything went wrong? Perhaps the sages were able to connect these histories or universes to banish enemies such as the Twilight and even Ganondorf. After all, they do control the Temple of Time, a direct connection to the Sacred Realm, which, by the way, I'll drop this here for now, but I'll definitely elaborate on it in a future theory, so make sure to like and subscribe. I'll give you a moment to do so. Thank you so much, I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, and we'll move on. I believe that Skyloft became the Sacred Realm, and therefore it exists at the center of the timeline as a sort of bifrost between all points in time. I'll just let that one sit with you for now. And what if some mysterious magic wielders were able to study and harness the power of the spiral, using it to create machines or even raise the dead? They think they are controlling time, but it's much more serious than that. They are playing with the balance of reality itself and its interplay in a vast universe. But that's just a theory. Zelda! No, I'm sorry, I apologize. If you'd like to see more videos like this one, please like and subscribe. I've already begun the script for my next theory built on the concepts posed here, and in that one I tell you my thoughts on which game is the final link in the timeline spiral. And hint hint, it involves the Zonai. You don't want to miss it. Also, feel free to join our Discord. We love discussing Zelda and we have game nights ever so often. Alright, have a great day, friends. See ya!